The biggest mistake physicians make is with their money. I'm going to show you how paying off your student loans, buying that large boat, buying cash for a house is going to cost you millions and millions of dollars, where that $500,000 mistake could end up costing you $117 million. How do I know this? Hey, you're just a doctor, you're just a cardiologist. How do you know? Well, first of all, long before I was a doctor, I worked in the business world. For 4 years, I worked in the business world. I have an economics and finance degree. I actually started my own investment company at the age of 15 using my dad's own money and a custodial brokerage account. So I know a lot about this stuff. Been doing this for the better part of 35 years or so. So the biggest question that I get residents, students, other physicians ask me is, Dr. Alo, what if I live in an apartment for a year? I get that big contract. Let's say you're like a radiologist or a cardiologist or a neurologist, whatever it is, even hospitalist, whatever. I get that big contract. I'm gonna be making $500,000 a year. I can live in an apartment just like I'm doing now, save that $500,000 and then pay off all my student loans. This comes up in discussion forums all the time. This comes up in Reddit threads, chat groups, WhatsApp groups, whatever. Or they'll ask the question slightly differently. I got that big job. I got a $170,000 signing bonus. I'm making $300,000, $400,000 a year. I'm living off, the $50,000 that I'm used to living off of. I'm still single. I don't have kids. I don't have a wife or a spouse or whatever. What if I save up that $400,000 or $500,000 and pay cash for my first home? And I always ask them, why do you want to pay cash for your first home or pay off your student loans? And it's always something surrounding some negative feelings or guilt about debt. They feel guilty about debt. They feel guilty about going into debt. They feel guilty that they had to take out loans. They don't want to go into debt or take out loans for their house. I will tell you that the richest people in the world know how to leverage debt to make even more money. They take their money and they make it work for them. Now, if you have some religious beliefs around this, I totally get that, but think of this in this way first and see if your religious beliefs jive with this. Obviously, I'm not a religious scholar, but I know a lot of people watching this might be like, well, that goes against everything we've been ever taught, like, Dave Ramsey kind of stuff or whatever. I'm more a pragmatist, and, I believe that as a human being, you should not burn money. And I think probably anybody believes you should not burn money. Like, if you have money, you should not be burning your money. This is the biggest single mistake. Now, obviously, going out and buying a Lamborghini and a boat and, investing in a friend's nightclub, all that stuff is nonsense either. But I rarely get questions like, hey, Dr. Alo, should I spend my signing bonus on a Lamborghini or a boat or a yacht? Nobody asks that. They know that's stupid. But what they do ask, which there's a lot of nuance to, is what should I do with my money if I get a huge first salary plus a signing bonus and I get about $500,000 to spend? Now, let's say you don't have $500,000 and you can only spare $10,000, $100,000, $250,000. I'm going to give you all scenarios starting with $10,000, $100,000, $250,000, and $500,000 at the extreme. And I'm going to give you multiple different scenarios of how the math works out. And we're going to talk about investing in the stock market at historical trends. If you go back to 1901 until now, the stock market has earned about 11.7 to 11.9% annually on average for over the last 100 years. It self-corrects, it gets better. This includes the Great Depression. Obviously, 1929 through 1931, you saw a huge dip. This includes the dip after COVID, which wasn't as bad, then the 1998 dot-com boom, the 2007, 2008, housing market crash, all of that, includes all of that. So we're gonna use historical lows of 11.9, let's say about 12, and we're gonna use the historical highs. Usually at its highest, the stock market earns on average about 17.9%. So we'll use that as a historical high. Now, don't get me wrong. There are years where you get a 22, 24, 30% boom, especially after COVID, after a crash, after a correction. That's what they call crashes. After that, you will have that. But for now, we're going to talk about it in the lowest historical averages of around 11, 12%, and then the average highs. It's not the highest, but it's a good number. And if you want to, in your mind, pick a number like 16% annual return just to be on the safe side, or go with the lowest ever, just so you know in your mind what kind of money you are burning. So whether it's $10,000, $100,000, or $500,000, you are burning money if you don't follow my philosophy. Now, like I said, it's very, very important to understand this so that you are not wasting your money. So let's say you had $10,000, right? This is only $10,000. This is like somebody who just has $10,000 to spare, or you want to start a savings account for your child. You have $10,000, you start an account for every one of your kids. I got 4 kids. If I put $10,000 for each single kid, in 10 years, at the lowest historical return, remember that 12%, at the lowest historical return, you're looking at that account will be worth $31,000. If it was 18% in 10 years, it would be about 52. So somewhere in between that, you could say maybe it's going to be around 38, 40, whatever. If you put $100,000 in 10 years, it's going to be worth 310,000. And if you assume the highest return, you probably could have about $500,000. If you take $250,000, now this is probably for somebody who gets a big bonus, or they're able to live off $100,000 and use the $250 for this, that, and the other thing, instead of putting paying off your student loans. Most student loans end up being about $200,000 to $280,000 on average for medical school, or any dental school, whatever it is, law school maybe even, I don't know, but $250,000 invested in the stock market. Lowest historical average in 10 years will be $700,000, almost $800,000. In the highest historical returns, you're looking at $1.3 million. Just let that sink in. It gets a lot better, but just look at these numbers and then just imagine other things. If you were to somehow get to that $500,000, let's say you're one of these super highly touted, highly wanted physicians. You're like a neurointerventional, cardio-structural, electro, whatever. You're one of the top of the top of the top. You go to a big center, high volume center, they're willing to pay you $700,000, let's say, some crazy number. You live off the 200 and you use the 500. In 10 years, that's 1.5 million. Now, for most people, they say about 1.6 million is retirement money, or FU money, where you could just walk up to your boss and say, I don't want to work here anymore. F you. Like, or if your boss comes up to you and says something to you, and you'd be like, I don't really care anymore. Goodbye. I'll see you later. I got my 1.5 million. I can pretty much retire, live off about 50 to 80,000 a year for the rest of your life without that investment diminishing. You could draw about 3.4%. When you do the math, if you withdraw 3.4% of the 1 million, or like 1.5 million in this case, you could live off of that, and the 1.5 million never goes down. It stays the same. It can keep growing at a rate that's about matches that 3.4%. If it was the top historical return of 18% here, you end up with 2.6 million. Now, for most people, that is life-changing and life-altering. All you have to do is work for 10 years. So rather than taking that 500,000 or 250,000 bonus or that first year salary and just dumping it into a house or paying off your student loans, you are absolutely going to you'll never make this kind of money back. There's a concept in medicine, in finance and economics called opportunity cost. The opportunity to make 2.6 million, if everything goes right, is completely gone if you burn this 500,000. If you do not put this $500,000 away and let it sit for 10 years, the opportunity to make 2.6 million is completely gone. That's a lot of times why I tell people who want to do another fellowship, don't. Like, why are you going to do an imaging fellowship and a heart failure fellowship and then go back to this fellowship and that fellowship? You're making $60,000 a year when the opportunity to make 500 is out the window. That is the opportunity cost of you going one more year of fellowship. You're wasting 500,000, which you could have completely put away and ended up with 2.6 million in 10 years and completely retired if you feel that this is enough. Now, probably you'll end up somewhere between here. Let's say it ends up being just like 1.8 or 9 or something like that. This is still pretty much, I could retire, live off 30 to 100,000 a year, and it'll still grow. So this is still not like 10% of 1 million is obviously 100,000. 3.4% is about 34-ish for every million. So now you're almost at 2. You're looking at $60,000 a year. Some people could live off of that, some could not. So definitely this is the math that you have to be thinking about when you're trying to decide making life-altering decisions. Burning $250,000, $500,000, paying off a really low-interest student loan, really low-interest house. Like nowadays, you could get a house. The interest rates are between 3 and 5%. Student loans, same thing. When I consolidated, when I graduated, it was 2.4%. Now they're like in the 5 to sometimes 8 range. Still, you're gaining 6 to maybe 11%, 12% more than the cost of that loan. So you're still way ahead even if you subtract that out. And then you're going to ask me, well, you know, what about the amount that I'm paying for my loans or whatever? Look, usually student loans, depending on how much it is, it's anywhere from $500 a month to $1,500 a month. When you're making $600, $700, or you know, whatever amount you're making, you can put that $1,500 a month away for your loan. And I'll show you the math there in a second. Put that $1,500 away towards your loan and still take that $500,000 and end up with $2.6 million in 10 years. Now it gets even better. What if we go out to 20 years? Now this is assuming you put the 10,000 in. This is 20 years. You put the 10,000 in and you never touch it again. We'll get into what happens when you add to it. You never touch this again. You end up with almost $100,000 in 20 years for this 10K that you put in. So you got a kid that was born today, you start a 401k plan or IRA, whatever stock market, you know, investment fund. You drop the 10K in there, 96,000 by the time they're 20 years old. Yeah, it could help them buy their first home, get married, whatever. Not that you care really what they do. If they hold on to it, if the market does even better, you're looking at 273, almost $300,000 in 20 years, assuming the market does really well. And the market in the last 10 years has obviously way beaten the historical outcomes. The worst year we had was the COVID year in 2020, which I think was like a -3.5 or -4.3%, something like that. So still, when the market crashed, its worst crash in a while, it was like -4. When the historical lows over the last 100 years are about a -3.8%. So historical lows are not that low. This is what you end up with. If you were to invest 100K, you drop 100K in 20 years, it's almost $1 million. If the market goes really well, it's almost $3 million. Just imagine that. If you were to take 250,000 in 20 years at the lowest return, you're at $2.5 million almost, or almost $7 million. If you somehow figure out a way to get that 500,000 instead of buying that house, paying off half your loans or your spouse's loans or whatever, you can end up with almost 5 million in 20 years, which for anybody, that is absolutely like I could retire today money, and almost 14 million, 13.7 million if the market does really, really well. But it gets even better. This is where this compounding really, really adds up. You're gonna be blown away in a little bit here after a couple more slides. Let's say we do the same thing now, but for 30 years, 12%, 18%. You know, the market could do anywhere between here and here, assuming like the country doesn't end or something crazy like that. That $10,000 in 30 years, assuming nothing else, is almost $300,000. You tell your kid, I started a savings account for you, and by the time you are 30 years old, even if you just put 10K in there, it's almost $300,000. If everything goes well, it could be $1 million. Even better, right? If you did 100,000, you're looking at almost 3 million and or $14 million if all goes well in 30 years. So even as a resident, a first year resident, first year fellow, first year graduate, you got your first job, they gave you a 50 to 100,000 signing bonus, whatever it is. If you just took that signing bonus and put it away, let's say you graduate, you know, you're done, you're working by age 30, by 60, you have $14.3 million by age 60. You never have to work another day in your life, and you can stop, you know, way earlier. Obviously, you saw the 20s and the 10s. Let's say you took 250. Don't get me wrong, there are recruiters out there willing to pay $250,000 to recruit someone, and they'll give them that signing bonus. Or you get one of these jobs, it's like an $850,000 a year job. Drop that 250 into a 30 years. Just hold on to it. You almost have $7.5 million, or if everything goes even better, almost $36 million. Gets better. You keep thinking these numbers are wild, it gets even better. If you took 500,000, all right, 500,000, and you put it away, and the market does about as bad as it normally does. The market does the worst it normally does. You know, over a 30-year span, the market does 11.9, 12%. You got almost $15 million. If the market does the best it usually does over a 30-year span, where now it's 30 years, you're looking at about the normal 18%. You're not looking at those 22s and 24s. You're looking at about $71.8 million. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. What if you look at 10 years, right? But you also put away $500 a month, right? So $6,000 a year on top of that. So if you also invest $500 a month. So The 10,000 at the lowest becomes almost 150, or over 200,000 doing the best. The 100K, almost $500,000, or close to $1 million, almost 800,000. The 250, if you kept adding to it, goes to 940,000, almost $1 million, or almost 1.7 million dollars. The 500 now, in just 10 years, is almost $2 million. If you just add 500 a month, like that car payment that you were going to get, that fancy Lexus or BMW or whatever, why don't you get like a Ford F-150, like me, get a Ford F-150, take that extra 500 a month that you were going to do for that 7 years or 5 years or whatever you're paying off that truck, take that 500, keep dropping it in, you end up with $3 million in just 10 years. $3 million in just 10 years. Now, what if you do 20 years with adding $500 a month and 30 years in green with adding $500 a month? So the $10,000, if you add every month to it 500, you end up with almost 600,000 in 20 years, 2.1 million. That's a point. 2.1 million in 30 years. And if the market does really well, you end up with 28 million in 30 years. You end up with 4.7 million in 20 years. The 250,000 here now ends up being 3.2 million in 20 years. If the market does really well, you end up with 10 million. Now, this is where things get really cool. The 500,000 in 20 years is 5.9 million, or 18.9 if the market does really well. However, the 250 becomes 10 million in 30 years, or 60 million. $60 million in 30 years if you just take 250,000 right now and add just 500 a month. In 30 years, you're going to have $60 million if all goes well. Otherwise, you could end up with just about 10 million, which is still obviously amazing. The 500,000 that you are investing in 20 years will be 5.9, in 30 years will be 19.7, assuming the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario will be almost $20 million in 30 years. Best case scenario, this is the big winner here. Cha-ching, cha-ching, put some stars, some X's, whatever. $113 million. If you were to take 500,000 now and just add 500 a month for 30 years, 500 a month, this 500 now becomes this big, huge, game-changing winner right here, $113 million. So when you guys ask me, Doc, what should I do with my money? Don't do anything dumb. Don't chase the news. I always get like doctors come up to me like, hey, did you hear what Eli Lilly's doing? Did you hear what Microsoft is doing? I heard about this thing called AI or robotics and nano whatever computers. That is already factored into the market. Here's what you actually need to invest in to not be an idiot. Do not invest. I'm gonna put this up here as a bonds, CDs. All right, here's stocks and mutual funds. Do you guys know what mutual funds are? Okay, so I'll just explain these really, really quickly, and then I'll tell you what to do. So bonds are and CDs are like super slow growth, 1 to 4% annually. These are like protection mechanisms where people just want to keep their money. They're close to retirement. Let's say they're about 58. They want to retire at 60. They don't want to lose any of their money. They will shift everything over from stocks over to bonds and CDs and, really slow growth, government-backed, investment vehicles that are super low yield, but they'll protect your money. It'll grow at about 4%, maybe 5% per year at the best. Stocks is like, Google, Microsoft, and these are the ticker symbols, Apple, NVIDIA, whatever. All the stocks are individual stocks. You can go buy Google, Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA. This is not always a winning strategy because what if you buy the stuff that ain't going to win? The best strategy is this. You buy mutual funds. Mutual funds are like a basket of stocks. Let's say this is mutual fund 1. All right. This has, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, technology stocks. This could be tech, right? Number 2, mutual fund 2 could be like, medical, healthcare stuff. Mutual fund number 3, this one could be, global, worldwide investments. They invest a little bit in Europe, a little bit in Asia, a little bit in, whatever. So these are like baskets of stocks. Under each mutual fund, there'll be individual stocks. They'll have like 30 to 40 stocks. 10% will be Google, 15% will be Microsoft, 30% will be Apple, 2% will be Nvidia, like whatever. They have it divided up in a way that they think is the safest, right? Each individual stock here. Same thing with the medical ones, same thing with these ones. Now, if you don't want this, I still don't recommend. I don't think you should go and buy mutual funds because most of the mutual funds you buy have a high price. There's a person managing this. There's like Merrill Lynch. Let's put Mr. Lynch up here. That's not his name actually, but there's a guy here getting paid $10 million a year to manage this fund. And these guys getting paid millions of dollars a year cannot beat the stock market, all right? And then what does that mean? He is actively managing this fund. He is buying this many shares of this many shares of that. Oh, NVIDIA dipped, was gonna get rid of NVIDIA, put in something else and all that. He's actively managing this mutual fund, this basket of stocks that you can buy. These guys that get paid millions of dollars cannot beat the stock market. They've never, 92, 93, sometimes even 96% of them never beat the stock market. So what should you do instead? This is where the magic happens. Total market index funds, all right? These are funds that invest in the total stock market. These are like funds that are, there's like ones for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, there's an S&P 500, there's the Russell 2000, there's all of these. This is like the top 30 stocks. This is obviously 500, this is obviously 2000. I don't necessarily, you can't go and buy these 30 stocks. That makes no sense. You don't want to go and buy, the 30 stocks that are in the Dow Jones because that's silly. You are buying something that might not be there. They might take it out. And the nice thing about index funds, so what you can do is buy the index funds of these. Like the Dow Jones has an index fund called Dow Jones Mutual Fund or Index Fund. Same thing with the S&P. They usually start with SPY. The Russell 2000, same thing. Some kind of index fund, right? You can buy these index funds that are not actively managed. 96% of the mutual fund managers, these guys that look like this, that are getting paid $10 million or $100 million sometimes per year to actively manage these funds, 96% of them are not beating the stock market. The stock market by itself, if you buy these 30, these 500, these 2,000, always beats these guys, no matter what. They're actually measured and ranked on how often they beat these guys. If they can't beat the index, they're losers. And that's literally how they're ranked every year. They come out with reports of saying, this guy beat the market by 2%. This guy beat the market by 30%. We have a 5-year record of matching the market. Even if they just match the market, that's considered good. You don't want to pay their fees. So what you do is you get these total market index funds, right? They're no cost or low cost. There's a lot of them. You could buy the mutual funds that mirror the market. You could buy, and then every company has one, like Vanguard might have VOO, VIG, VTI. These are all, funds that mimic the market. And if the market goes up, they go up. The market goes down, they go down. Their cost ratios are usually like 0.03%. So if you have $1 million or I don't know, like $1,000, doesn't even cost like 3 cents to manage the fund. All they do is list it and let you buy it. It's very simple. It's not actively managed. You buy it. If it's in the Dow Jones Industrial 30, it's in the fund for that. If it's in the SP 500, it's in that fund. It's super easy to manage because there's like basically nothing in there. And same thing for all of them. So you want to buy these. Maybe I'll do another video on which ones you should buy or not buy. They're all about the same. It's not really rocket science, but make sure they're no cost or low cost. You can actually buy these on the index for free. They're traded like stocks. A lot of times They're called ETFs. And the ETF, because a lot of these funds will have a minimum. They'll say, like, in order to buy Vanguard's total market mirror fund, you got to put in $10,000. Let's say you don't want to put in $10,000, you just want to buy $100 worth. You can buy the ETF of that fund. The ETF is like a small stock, like a portion of that fund. Like if there's thousands of shares out there, you buy one, it's $100, right? Instead of buying the millions, $10,000 worth of shares. So I hope this has shed some light that $500,000 or $200,000 or 100 or 10,000 even that you are planning on burning, you do not need to burn it. You can actually save it and end up with $117 million. Just let that sink in. That is absolutely mind-blowing. If you took that 500,000, best case scenario, 18% return, you add $500 a month, which anybody should be able to do, wait 30 years, you have $117 million. So hope that helps.